Hey guys, Galaxy Studios here, coming at you with a completely new topic for the first time in a very long time. Although, it's not completely new. I have done one Dragon Ball video in the past, with a promise to a series that I never followed up on, just because something happened a couple months later that caused me to take a break, and then something happened a couple months after that that took this channel in a completely different direction. I promised to do my thoughts on videos soon, which didn't come and is probably not going to, and I'm sorry about that, but I don't particularly care either. What I do care about, however, is what the world just lost. I've already put out a video on it, but I needed to make something longer, and I can think of no better way to honor Akira Toriyama's legacy than by ranking literally every Dragon Ball canon arc and movie. I have no script for this, so let's just jump right in with what unfortunately had to take last place. Good lord, there is nothing to talk about with Resurrection F. Apart from some excellent moments such as the training and Frieza's revival with F by Maximum the Hormone playing in the background, there's just nothing to say about Resurrection F. Super Saiyan Blue is pointless. Golden Frieza is introduced in the worst possible manner in terms of fight choreography and ultimately amounts to nothing. Vegeta gets robbed. And overall, basically nothing happens. Resurrection F, despite its good elements, including the ton of effort that was clearly put into all of the non-CGI animation in this movie, despite that, Resurrection F just had to get last place. It's hard for me to put it here, but something had to go here, and it had to be this. I've reviewed Peel Off already, so check that video out if you haven't. Which, let's be honest, you haven't. But to summarize, Peel Off is an arc that alternates between some very cute moments, surprisingly dramatic climaxes with the Ozaru transformation and what it reveals about Goku's past, and some very, very uncomfortable scenes, nearly all of them involving Roshi. It took Toriyama a while to be able to control himself, and this arc demonstrates that very well. But in spite of all of this, it's still got some excellent parts, such as Goku and Chi-Chi's first meeting, the aforementioned Ozaru transformation, and the actual wish. Oolong's wish is actually really well-executed comedy. And well, despite all the negatives I've just said, it's still an arc filled with a lot of heart and not very much ambition. It was an almost perfect place for the story to start. I'm really sorry to all you OG Dragon Ball fans for ranking it this low, but I'm just going to remind you that we all saw the same story. Except for the ones who haven't. In which case, please read it. Alright, let's get this out of the way. I'm ranking them both together because, number one, I would find them too difficult to rank separately, especially since the Baba section feels like an addendum to the Red Ribbon story. And number two, my general feelings on Red Ribbon are exactly the same as Peel Off, only even more extreme, including a very uncensored panel that I am not going to show. This arc just flip-flops between good stuff, okay stuff, and some bad stuff in a few key areas, especially that. But I will get the good stuff out of the way. General Blue's a fun character. Goku's assault on Muscle Tower is very entertaining, and the characters he meets there are excellent, and I was really glad to see him show up in the Buu Saga. The entire Mercenary Tau section is perfect. I wouldn't change a thing about it. It's basically the prototype for what Dragon Ball would be going forward, and Toriyama executes it really well, especially with his handling of the water. We will get back to that soon. However, I do have some thoughts on the climax of the Red Ribbon Army arc. Staff Officer Black is my pick for Dragon Ball's worst villain, and yes, I am including Jiren. While the moment when he shoots Red on the spot is excellent, he does nothing outside of that. And I'm not even going to talk about his design because I'm not the right person to do so. As for the Baba tournament, well, it gets better as it goes along, but it starts off pretty bad and really doesn't get much better up until the final fight between Goku and Grandpa Gohan, which is absolutely perfect. It's one of the best endings of any arc of Dragon Ball, only approached by two others on this list, which we will get to. But overall, the bad parts of the Red Ribbon Army arc just kept it low on this list. And I'm really sorry to all you OG Dragon Ball fans, but we're not done with the Dragon Ball arcs yet. The first half of the King Piccolo arc is excellent, featuring some truly insane build-up to the best main villain in the series so far. King Piccolo and his minions basically take out the entire main cast, and after that, not in this order, King Piccolo gets his wish on the Dragon Balls, returns to eternal youth, takes over the world, and in a feat not replicated by any villain in the series before or since, blows up Shenron. And then the second half. It's not bad, but it's an indication that Akira Toriyama was still inexperienced when it came to this kind of story. The Ultra Divine Water is one of the worst handled aspects of any arc of the series, and King Piccolo's handling of Ten Shinhan was kind of disrespectful to the second strongest hero of the cast. The story kind of fizzles out, and that is kind of a letdown, is when the first half was so excellent, but at least it ended off on a pretty good note. When it comes to the Tournament of Destroyers, I can only think that it could have been so much better than what it ended up being, but it's still got some good moments sprinkled in here and there. Frost was a missed opportunity. Vegeta's fight with Vegeta was severely mishandled, considering there is literally no justification as to why Vegeta doesn't go all out. But when Kaba hits the field, that's when the good stuff starts. Vegeta vs. Kaba is actually, unironically, my favorite Vegeta fight in Dragon Ball Super. And as for the episode immediately following it, episode 38, I'd argue it's the best of the arc, even better than 39. Featuring Hit's build-up as a mysterious opponent with a mysterious moveset, and Goku's process in learning and counteracting that moveset. The fight between Goku versus Hit in general starts off really, really well, then goes on a bit of a downturn once Goku turns blue, then hits an insane high with Blue Kaioken. Side note, while I commend Masuko Nozawa for her performance as Goku, despite, in my opinion, her not being a good fit for adult Goku specifically, now before you say anything, she's an amazing voice actress. I just don't think she fits well as adult Goku. With all that said, Sean Shumwell gave his absolute all into that scream, and it works for me so well. Unfortunately, episode 40 is where the wheels fall off. Hit's evolution of the time skip reaches ridiculous levels here, and overall the fight just grinds to a halt. At least Zeno's fun. Now, I know I rank this above Pilaf, Red Ribbon, Fortune Teller Baba, and King Piccolo, and I know that might be controversial, but I just had more fun with the second half of this one, although it is pretty close between the four. And speaking of Dragon Ball Super, we got another one coming right up next, and I think it should be pretty obvious which one. The Goku Black arc makes zero sense. But honestly, as Kaiser put it in the Team 4-Star Top 12 Sagas list, as this was coming out, it would have been insane for the fanbase to think about and theorize. I wasn't there for it, but I could definitely understand when looking at the events as they were revealed. Even though the series breaks its own rules of time travel in order to give the Time Ring a non-existent power in episode 61, that entire subplot about Hakai erasure affecting all timelines was just to give the Time Ring another power that didn't affect the story in any single way. And of course, the all-too-infamous blunder of going back to the future 3 times instead of 2. But with all that said, a lot of the arc works surprisingly well. The Tournament of Destroyers saved Dragon Ball Super with Blue Kaioken, and the Goku Black arc made sure it would stay saved with the best opening episode of any arc of Dragon Ball ever. Goku Black is a very interesting take on evil Goku, and it was really interesting to see President Zamasu's descent into villainy, a descent that in another timeline went on to father Goku Black. The animators started picking up their A-game, with an intense sequence in the middle of the arc, and, of course, everything in episode 66. Although Merge Zamasu is a weaker villain than both of his components, he still facilitated what looked to the fanbase like the arc jogging across the finish line out of breath. And then episode 67 happened. We don't talk about episode 67. Overall, Goku Black arc makes no sense, but it's got some excellent stuff sprinkled in there. It definitely kept the series going, which, well, we'll get to exactly how that turned out in a moment. I love the Buu Saga's first half. Unabashedly love it. The Great Saiyan Man stuff, the build-up to and reveal of Buu, basically everything about Videl and Gohan's relationship, they're my favorite Dragon Ball couple by a mile. I just love this first half. It was a perfect evolution of Gohan's character after the place he was in at the end of the Cell Saga. And the unique, adorable, and terrifying threat posed by Boo was a nice change of pace. Unfortunately, the third quarter of the arc, comprising everything from Vegeta's final explosion to the unveiling of Kid Buu, drags the arc down a lot. Super Saiyan 3 retroactively devaluing Goku vs. Majin Vegeta, Gotenks actually dragging the story down every time he is on screen, Gohan's severe mishandling. Everything about this third quarter indicates to me that Toriyama really didn't know what he was doing when writing the story and was just trying to keep the story going until he could figure out a way to end it. But with that said, the way he ended it was excellent. I'll get to this higher up the list, but the Buu Saga's final battle feels even more like an all-hands-on-deck situation than the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament. Literally everybody contributes in order to help Buu be defeated. New Namek, Vegeta, Fat Buu, Goku, obviously, and, of course, the MVP of the arc, Mr. Satan. Him being the one to rally the people of Earth to lend the energy to the Spirit Bomb is absolutely perfect, and I don't need to tell you why. It's also nice to see a lot of characters throughout the ages giving their energy to the Spirit Bomb. If only Launch was in the manga. But anyway, yeah, the final battle is phenomenal. Check out Team 4 Star's DBcember on that fight for more information on how the anime actually improved on this fight. But the Buu Saga, it's a beautiful mess. I've had mostly positive things to say about it, which should tell you guys enough about exactly how stacked this list is. But one more thing before we move on. This arc's quality is tied to Vegeta's presence. He's the best rated character in this arc by far, and his final explosion remains as perhaps the best scene of the entire series. It's a serious contender. But anyway, we're going back to Dragon Ball Super for this next one. The Granola arc is the only arc in the series that I had the pleasure of seeing come out monthly. Each new chapter brought with it more and more questions. Questions that I got to see answered. It was insane speculating on where the arc was going to go, and now that it's long over, all I can say is, it was a good story, but it didn't have a third act. Granola is a very interesting character, as are the Heaters for the most part. The conflict for this arc basically being the Heaters pointing Granola at the Saiyans and using that to have cover while they use the Dragon Balls was a unique concept, and it led to some really good choreography in the fights between Goku, Vegeta, Granola, and eventually Gas. As for Ultra Ego, side note, HNK is a stupid abbreviation and the fandom should never have used it for that 1 month, is an excellent form that's a nice counterpart to Ultra Instinct, which Vegeta desperately needed. And then we get to my main problem with the arc. There is no third act. The arc was building to a point where the battle between Goku, Vegeta, Granola, and Gas would be either inconclusive or Gas would win, and then they would fight elsewhere. And then Frieza shows up and hijacks the arc, ending it early. Frieza is excellently written in this arc, even if it is a departure from where his mental state was at the end of Dragon Ball Super Broly. Granola's got an excellent moveset and has been set up for some great development going forward, and I can't wait to see if it'll play out. But for now, how about we take a look back? The 21st Tenkaichi Budokai, World Martial Arts Tournament, or number 1 under the Heavens Martial Artists Gathering, if you really want to be English, is the arc that made Dragon Ball what it is. Faced with the prospect of a predictable narrative after the conclusion of the Pilaf arc, Akira Toriyama decided to take the series in a completely new direction, basically launching the tournament arc into public consciousness in general as he was doing it. The 21st World Martial Arts Tournament is an excellent showcase of how to do it mostly right. Some fights, like Namu vs. Ranfan, aren't exactly that good, but for the most part, they're all great. Krillin vs. Bacterian is hilarious, Goku vs. Garen is fine. Jackie Chun vs. Yamcha is an excellent introduction. As for the semifinals, Krillin vs. Jackie Chun contains a scene where the two of them describe everything that happened within like 0.2 seconds, including punches, kicks, spitting, booger flicking, and rock, paper, scissors. And as for the finals, I'm just going to paraphrase Lenny Pator. The Kamehameha, John Kid, the Drunken Fist, the Crazy Fist, the Sleepy Boy Technique, the Thundershock Surprise, and then a giant monkey. And then Roshi's response to this is to blow up the moon. Beyond the excellent choreography and creativity rarely seen elsewhere in the series, this fight has the unique stakes of Roshi wanting to make sure Goku keeps pushing his limits, which other people have talked about much more than me, and can describe in much better detail. But overall, the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai is really, really good. Despite its lack of ambition, it's still, in my opinion, better than every Dragon Ball arc that isn't a tournament. And I think it just goes to show that Akira Toriyama, without question, had the best mastery of three-dimensional movement out of any mangaka I have ever seen. And he'll put those talents on display many times later on in this list. At this point, we arrive at Until Daima, the latest Dragon Ball release. Dragon Ball Super Superhero. Please never do another CGI movie ever again, Toei. Your 2D animation has reached amazing levels. Don't move backwards, please. As for the story, it is surprisingly good. Piccolo is excellently written here, as is Pan, as is Gohan. Although I'm still not sure how I feel about Beast Gohan. And the Red Ribbon Army is pretty well handled. Beyond the logical issue on how exactly the Gammas are able to become so strong that they could definitely beat Golden Frieza, the Gamma androids were handled well enough. And I'm just going to say this right now, Cell Max being a mindless kaiju is not a problem for me. I liked him as an endgame threat. And the choreography and technical narrative surrounding his fight was excellent. The last thing I want to say is that, despite me still not knowing how I feel about Beast Gohan, I did like Orange Piccolo. But overall, apart from the CGI, this is good news for Dragon Ball's future moving forward. Or at least that's what I would say. But now, we once again take a look back for nostalgia's sake. I'm disagreeing with Team 4-Star over this, but in my opinion, the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament is a massive step up over the first, with the best semi-final round in the tournaments by far. But before that, let's take a look at the quarterfinals. After the preliminary rounds where the main contenders made themselves known, we get the surprisingly brutal Tien vs. Yamcha, a good gag fight in Jackie Chun vs. Manwolf, the hilarious Krillin vs. Chaozu, and the good establishing fight of Goku vs. Panput. As for the semi-finals, we first get the character-rich Tien vs. Jackie Chun, which puts the hint in Tien's head and the audience's that despite his actions in the quarterfinals, Tien isn't evil. And then it's followed up by, in my opinion, the best Krillin fight of the entire series, bar none. Goku vs. Krillin is just so much fun. I unabashedly played Mesusa Tenkaichi on my headphones the entire time I was reading it. Please do that. It makes it so much better. It's just a fun match between two friends that was always going to end Goku's win. But that doesn't make it any less fun. And Krillin got to show off some excellent stuff too. And then we get Goku vs. Tien. Prior to this fight starting, Roshi says, "You may never see a fight like this ever again." And he was right. This fight's choreography and creativity has never been replicated since. The amount of techniques thrown out by both competitors is just astounding, with my personal favorite being the volleyball fist. We got Tien growing extra arms. We got Goku imitating King Choppa and splitting his arms into freezing after images. We got the solar flare. And, of course, we got one of my favorite techniques in the entire series, the Kikoho. And after the ring is destroyed, it becomes a question of who's going to hit the ground first. And after an excellent play by Goku, it comes down to the most outside of interference to end the fight, giving Tien the victory. But during that fight, Tien came to terms with the fact that he doesn't want to be an assassin anymore, and outright rejected Master Crane's tutelage. He would go on to take over the Crane School, pushing it in a new direction, which I think is a good ending for the character, even if Super kinda did him dirty. But honestly, I like the fact that Goku once again lost in the finals. It's an actual subversion of expectations this time, as opposed to last time where it was the goal of the arc. And it set up the 23rd World Tournament perfectly. But we'll get to that in a moment. In the meantime, we've got another tournament to talk about. The most lopsided arc in all of Dragon Ball. One moment, the audience is cheering at the screen because of Roshi's determination to never give up no matter what. The next, we're crying in frustration because Tien only gets one kill and takes himself down in the process. One moment, we're wowed at episode 118, which I will talk about in a moment, And next we see Piccolo be eliminated by the one fighter he hard counters. And on top of that, although the arc definitely needed length, 36 episodes is just too long, and that's just for the main tournament. The recruitment arc has some hidden gems, chief among them being Android 17 versus Goku, although Android 17 being exactly as strong as he is makes zero sense and is never explained, and of course literally everything involving Frieza, who might actually be at his best here, across the entire franchise. And then we get to Ultra Instinct, the best transformation Dragon Ball has seen since Super Saiyan. And it's not particularly close in my eyes. Every single time Goku uses it, it gets the respect it deserves. With Goku vs. Jiren Round 1 literally breaking Crunchyroll, Goku vs. Kefla containing the most acclaimed piece of fight choreography in Dragon Ball, and we'll get to what happens next. But first I want to touch on episode 118, which is, in my opinion, the best adult Gohan has ever been written, showcasing his character development in a positive direction, with what he's learned making him someone who is able to stand on the battlefield and not crumble under the pressure as he did in the Saiyan Saga. It is a perfect realization of an adult Gohan, and it ends with an honorary father-son Kamehameha to knock out both Universes 6 and 2. And then we get to the final fight between Goku and Jiren, eventually involving Frieza and 17, which is, well, Team 4-Star put it at number 3 for a reason, and by their criteria, I am inclined to agree. This fight is spectacular from beginning to end, featuring a perfect unveiling of complete Ultra Instinct, the best animation in the Dragon Ball episodic series as a whole, and quite possibly the best finale of any arc of Dragon Ball since, well, we'll get to that. Episode 131 is perfect. Aside from Goku in base and running on fumes being way stronger than he should be, I have no problems with this at all. My compliments to the storyboarder, because that final sequence synchronized to Ultimate Battle is just perfect. I've been saying that word a lot, but it's just perfect. And 17 being the one to win is just, again, perfect. The main things holding the Tournament of Power back are the fact that it was not fun to watch weekly, although I wasn't there for that. Jiren being Jiren up until the last 2 episodes, where he first gets his worldview broken and then finds a new one, resulting in a fairly well-written character in those 2 episodes, and the overall very slow pacing. But overall, it hits the highest heights of any arc of Super by a wide margin, and doesn't dip down to the lows that some of the other ones did, especially the Resurrection F adaptation. The Tournament of Power was an excellent way to end the Dragon Ball Super anime, and I am highly awaiting its return, if it does return. But it's not the end of Dragon Ball Super, and as for what's coming next, you better buckle up. The Moro arc seems like an answer to a lot of the problems Dragon Ball Super has had in the past. A foe that exists to combat power creep, an excellent character development for Vegeta, and to a lesser extent Goku. Moro, as a reskin of Boo power-wise and personality-wise, works really well. He's got an excellent design at first, and an even more excellent power set, and he forces Goku and Vegeta to find alternative ways to beat him. With Goku tapping into a form that was too fast for Moro to absorb energy from, and Vegeta finding a way to turn Moro's power against him, and making amends for the wrongdoing he did on Namek. And as for the final battle against Moro, well, people have said this before, but Moro 7-3 has a much worse design, and Angel Moro is even worse. But I will give Toyotaro credit for this. Chapter 66 is excellent. Everyone working together in order to defeat Planet Moro works so phenomenally well. And Oob being the one to make the difference is, I wouldn't have had it any other way. And of course, it does lead perfectly into Granola. And Totally Not Mark can explain why that's good more than I can. But overall, I love the Moro arc. For something entirely written by Toyotaro, it holds up to some of Toriyama's best work. And, well, it makes me think that Dragon Ball does have a future beyond Dragon Ball Daima. But for now, let's close out original Dragon Ball with the arc that everyone knows was always going to top that particular list. I always knew this arc was going to be number 3 on Team 4-Star's list. I initially gave this a 7 out of 10, but upon further rereads, I bumped its score up to an 8 out of 10, and it would have a spot on my first ever video, top 10 tournaments in fiction, knocking out the Tournament of Elements in the process. I'm sorry, Eclipse. But as for the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament, well, as I said, with the Buu Saga, it feels like an all-hands-on-deck situation, with Kami incarnating in the body of a mortal in order to stand up to Piccolo Jr. And he gets an excellent introduction in his fight against Yamcha, featuring Yamcha pulling out the Spirit Ball, actually landing a hit on Kami, and Kami immediately taking the fight seriously, going all out and knocking Yamcha out of the ring in one punch. It's a great fight, and it's just one fight in the best quarterfinal round in the World Martial Arts tournaments. We get Krillin doing everything he can, and showing Piccolo that the Earth is going to put up a serious fight in what is a clear contender for his best fight in the series. We get Tien making peace with his past and leaving it behind in his fight against Cyborg Tao. And we get the absolutely adorable reunion between Goku and Chi-Chi. Although it wasn't much of a fight, one hit and she just went down. The semifinals aren't quite on the same level as the 22nds, but that's because they were more to set up the finals than to act as character development. With that said, they're still excellent. The rematch between Goku and Tien is really fun, with both of them respecting the hell out of the other and using everything they have. With Goku ultimately prevailing thanks to him finding a countermeasure to the multi-form technique. And as for Kami versus Piccolo Jr., it's a really interesting fight featuring a conversation between the two of them in a language that almost certainly originated from Namek, and Piccolo learning from the mistakes of his predecessor by figuring out a way to reverse the Mafuba. And this leads to even higher stakes for the final, as Piccolo literally eats Kami. And as for the final, not only does Goku have to defeat Piccolo, not only does he have to find a way to save Kami, but he still wants to win the tournament. After both him and Piccolo have been built up to insane levels by the semifinals, with Goku having no trouble at all defeating Tien, the defending champion, and Piccolo comfortably taking down Kami, actually God, the entire fight is just Goku systematically and methodically breaking through every obstacle Piccolo puts in front of him. And it's amazing. There is a reason Team 4-Star ranked it as their number 2 fight in all of Dragon Ball. And I'm just going to say this. It's Goku's closest win ever. I don't think he has ever had a closer win than flying out of the sky with every single limb incapacitated and headbutting Piccolo for the win. On his third attempt, after falling short in the finals both times, Son Goku has finally earned the title he's been striving for 7 years now. The strongest under the heavens. And well, it's the end of an era. It's the start of Toriyama's greatest winning streak that would go on to define a generation. And for some, although I would personally disagree, that winning streak did in fact come to an end with a lot of the stuff I said about the Buu Saga actually applies to this in terms of its quality. The first half is excellent. The cat and mouse game, featuring perhaps the best Vegeta that has ever been written, and a very, very intimidating main villain in Frieza, has a ton of excellent moments in it that are too numerous to list all of. But, unfortunately, the third quarter, which in this case spans between Goku's 2 arrivals, does drag the arc down a bit for me, and is the reason why it didn't quite make the top 4. This third quarter, featuring Toriyama heavily exploiting the Saiyans' ability to get stronger by recovering from near-death situations, to shoot them up the power hierarchy to the point where they could even remotely compete with Frieza, just doesn't make a lot of logical sense, but it doesn't drag the arc down nearly as much as the Buu Saga's third quarter did. And at least Piccolo got to do some stuff, becoming the strongest Z fighter for the first time in a while, and certainly not the last time. And I don't think I need to say anything about Goku vs. Frieza, except for the fact that it's actually perfectly paced in the manga. With that said, if you do decide to read Dragon Ball, watch the scene where Goku turns Super Saiyan in whatever anime adaptation you prefer. It's the most iconic and influential scene in arguably anime period, and it's for a reason. I don't think I need to say anything more. Although I personally rank the Frieza saga a lot lower than most of the fanbase will, that's due to 2 things. Number 1, that third quarter. And number 2, the fact that I actually rate 2 entries on this list a lot higher than a lot of fans do. And if you've been paying attention, it should be clear what those two are. But for now, let's take a look at the Frieza Saga's common competition for the number 1 spot. The Saiyan Saga is the least flawed arc of Dragon Ball, and it's not even close. Aside from a couple logistical issues, there is nothing wrong with the Saiyan Saga, and in fact, I will get these logistical issues out of the way right now. Gohan's tail growing back at exactly the right time is a bit of a deus ex machina, and although Goku getting as strong as he does is believable, the rest of the Z Fighters getting as strong as they do in the span of a year is not. But apart from that, yeah, the Saiyan Saga is kind of perfect. The introductory section against Raditz provides a pretty steep learning curve to the kind of existence that Earth is about to enter, and the build-up to Vegeta and Nappa is kind of excellent. After the training arc, and Goku's mad dash to arrive on the field safely, featuring a brutal battle between Nappa and the Z Fighters, and Piccolo's sacrifice, which actually came out of nowhere. I'm sure it had to be a serious shock to audiences watching it for the first time. Because unlike Vegeta's sacrifice, which was built up to explicitly, as I just said, Piccolo's sacrifice comes out of nowhere. And then we get quite possibly the best fight in all of Dragon Ball. So many moving parts. So many characters actually contributing. I mean, all 4 were crucial to the victory. Yajirobe making an absolutely clutch play by cutting off Vegeta's tail. A successful Spirit Bomb detonation that is probably the best use of the Spirit Bomb in the series, despite its small size. And of course, that iconic beam struggle. There's nothing I can say about this that hasn't been said already, apart from the fact that this arc utilizes the Kaioken better than any other arc in the series, in my opinion. With ×3 being the signal that Goku is pushing himself beyond what he's supposed to handle, and Kaioken ×4 being him doing that even further. Overall, there's just nothing left to say. It's the Saiyan Saga. It's the first arc of Dragon Ball's second half, the first arc of Dragon Ball Z. Team 4 Star's number 1, a lot of fans' number 1, the arc of Dragon Ball with the least flaws, and the arc that kickstarted an era of anime. But it didn't quite make the top 3. And that is because of one movie and one particular scene. Words cannot express how much I adore the Flow Hero section. But I will get to that. Because everything else in this movie is also really good. It is Dragon Ball operating at peak efficiency for me. Everything works to an excellent degree, including what is, in my opinion, the best addition to the cast of Dragon Ball since Z ended in the 90s. Beerus and Whis. Both of them are absolutely excellent characters. And although Beerus is not used well in Resurrection F, Toriyama did learn from his mistake there, and has been able to successfully get him out of the way every single arc, despite him being stronger than Goku up until this point. Yes, I have said it, and I have been proven right. But yeah, the first half has a lot of stuff to love. It's probably the best the PLF gang have ever been written, minus Mai's dynamic with Trunks, which shouldn't be elaborated on. But apart from that, I do love the hostage scene, and I do love how it sets up the reveal that Videl is pregnant. As for the fight between Goku and Beerus, 95% of the time, it looks amazing. The CGI backgrounds aren't actually that bad for the most part, and the foreground animation is excellent. Super Saiyan God itself is a really interesting and really cool power-up that, despite the ritual making it feel somewhat unearned, is actually expanded on in-universe, with Goku expressing frustration at discovering a level of power he'll never be able to obtain on his own, and then him proving himself wrong by accessing that level of power on his own at the end of the battle. But, of course, I'm getting ahead of myself because we need to talk about my favorite shot in all of Dragon Ball and the build-up to it. Because, well, after Goku loses Super Saiyan God, lands a hit on Beerus, and Beerus retaliates by launching a ton of projectiles that bury Goku in Earth, he responds with, well, as I've said before, I have nothing but respect for Masako Nozawa, and she does a great job voice acting. But this is the only scene I will ever say this unambiguously. The English dub is just better. Sean Schemmel not only lets out the line, "I will not let you destroy my world" perfectly, but in a moment unmatched by any other dub, holds a scream throughout Goku's entire ascent out of the rubble. A scene I will get to in the next entry is my favorite scene in all of Dragon Ball, but that shot in the clouds of Goku and Beerus gradually getting higher and higher with the camera being barely able to follow them as they streak upward through the clouds and into space, that is my favorite shot. And I go so far as to say it's my favorite cut of animation Naoto Shishida has ever done. And of course, Goku loses. That's a nice ending. And it fits perfectly with Beerus's, although antagonistic, not villainous persona. I hold no qualms about putting Battle of Gods in my top 3. It's just so much fun, and a perfect introduction to the new era of Dragon Ball. But a new era of Dragon Ball implies that there once was an old era. And next on our list is the arc that many fans agree should have ended it. Buckle up, because we're getting controversial with this one. Despite the Cell Saga's many structural issues, it hits the highest heights of the entire series for me, and perfectly closes out the excellent story of Son Gohan. A lot of these structural issues don't bother me nearly as much as they do a lot of other people, and we're left with an arc filled with twists, turns, editorial changes that somehow don't manage to tear the story apart and provide an excellent ongoing narrative from beginning to end, and my favorite moments in all of Dragon Ball, full stop. We got Piccolo fusing with Kami, we got Piccolo versus 17, we got Vegeta versus 19, we got Vegeta versus Semi-Perfect Cell, we got Tien's best moment in all of Z or Super, we got the final Flash, we got Goku versus Cell, and then we get my favorite climax in the entire series, which had come as no surprise to anybody. It's the common pick, but that's because it's just right. Gohan turning Super Saiyan 2 is my favorite moment in the entire series because of not just what it meant for the story, but because of what it meant for the character of Son Gohan. It's the payoff to all of the build-up he has received with his outbursts of power based on emotion, and it's perfect. I would advise anyone who hasn't done so already to watch Dragon Ball Z Abridged Episode 60, specifically Part 1. It's the best version of the scene, in my opinion, and it's my favorite scene in all of Dragon Ball. And after a quick dismantling of Cell, it's followed up by 2 of my other favorite moments in the series. Goku's sacrifice and the absolute, utter perfection that is the Father-Son Kamehameha. And as for the ending, although it was never planned as such, it would be a perfect way to end it. With Goku taking his longest break from the Earth that he has taken in the entire series, Gohan inheriting the title as the Protector of Earth, and an epilogue neatly wrapping up the future's problems for now, this arc ties everything nicely up in a red ribbon. And well, this was a clear contender for number 1, but it couldn't quite top something that, well, let's just talk about it right now, because I hope I can convince some people to think long and hard about exactly how good this movie is. I didn't have to think for long about what I was going to put at number 1. I just went ahead and slapped Dragon Ball Super Broly there because this story genuinely feels like it's too big for Dragon Ball in a good way. It is grand on a scale not replicated by any other story in the entire franchise, and on top of that, it's still hilarious. It's the best Dragon Ball has ever looked, with the Shintani style being something I desperately want to see return in future material, and it's also Sumitomo's best score ever, in my opinion. The first half is good enough. The script is tight, perfectly introducing Broly and Paragus to Dragon Ball canon, with a nicely updated backstory for them, followed by a less than nicely updated backstory for Bardock. But it doesn't really bother me, and it's better than Dragon Ball Minus, but that's not saying much. At the very least, it fixes Minus's biggest issue, that being Bardock's reasoning for believing Frieza wants to blow him up. And then we get Frieza making his move on the Dragon Balls with an absolutely perfect wish. I can't express this enough. His wish is perfect. I wouldn't change a thing about it. And then, once all forces converge on the Ice Continent, we get a 40-minute action sequence that just works. It just works to such an insane degree. Maybe because it just stays fresh. It keeps throwing new things at you. With Yuya Takahashi's Vegeta versus Broly easing the viewers into the fight with something relatively familiar. Then Ryo Onashi's Goku versus Broly trying something a bit more experimental, featuring a POV first-person shot from Broly, and some new choreography style for Super Saiyan God, which I'm a huge fan of. As well as the actual best Super Saiyan Blue transformation in the series. I don't think there's any debate on that. And then after that, and after Frieza getting beaten by Broly for longer than the entire Tournament of Power, we get Gogeta vs. Broly, which contains an insane action cut from Naotoshi Shida, the best CGI sequence in all of Dragon Ball, which, for the first and only time, feels like it was actually needed in order to convey the visuals that were happening on screen. And then we get more insane action. And on top of all of that, the fight stakes, as soon as Gogeta turns Super Saiyan Blue, become will Broly survive this fight? Because Broly's character was updated excellently, going from mainly sadism to more out-of-control rampaging. And that works excellently. And it ends with probably the best usage of the Dragon Balls in the entirety of Dragon Ball Super. And of course, I must shout out the best scene of the entire movie, starting with Frieza putting on an absolute clinic of a performance. And, well, what happens next isn't Broly screaming his way into a Super Saiyan. It's him crying his way into becoming a Super Saiyan. And it works perfectly. I'd put it as one of my 3 favorite transformation scenes in all of Dragon Ball, alongside Trunks' first Super Saiyan transformation, and only behind Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Well, in spite of some logical issues, when I take a look at everything that Dragon Ball Super Broly is, from being the best that Dragon Ball has ever been presentation-wise, to the insanely effective story, I could do nothing else but put it at number 1. Please just rewatch it. And well, that's the list. I know this is going to be controversial, but honestly, I don't particularly care. The margins are pretty thin when it comes to the bottom half. And the top half, as a matter of fact. And I don't really think I have anything else to say besides, bye guys.